notes and rests. So I want to go into a bit more detail on notes we will use, their names and their equivalent rests. So with drum music, we have a range of notes, different note values as we've spoken about, but also their equivalent rests. So when we play a note, we notate it as such, because that note will last a certain length. But also when we don't play notes, we notate the space that we're not playing. Because playing the drums is a lot about the notes we play, but also about the notes we don't play. And obviously on the drums, a note lasting a period of time is right, but also we don't have really sustain on the drums. We hit a drum and it lasts for the same length every time, pretty much. I mean, there are other things you can do with like buzz rolls and stuff, but essentially you hit a drum and that's the sound. However, when we do it on a piano, we can hit a note and we can hold that note for a length of time. But with the drums, it's still, the initial hit can still last a period of time. So this is kind of what we have to notate, and the equivalent rest. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about it in 4/4 time, which is the easiest way to get your head around these notes and the rests. So if we were to go back to our idea of a whole bar of music in 4/4, which is this, our birthday cake, and how we're going to split this up. Okay? So the first note that we have, which is called a whole note. So this would be the whole of the birthday cake, a note that would last the whole bar, which is 4 beats. Okay? So what this is called is a whole note, which is kind of the American version, or a semi-breve, which is kind of the official name for it. So in a bar of music, just do it with my pad. With a bar of music, it would literally sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. If we were to play it on a piano, for instance, it would be more like do, do. See what I mean? So on a different instrument, we can hold that note so that it lasts the whole of the bar. But still, that hit takes up the same room in the bar. So that is a whole note or a semi-breve. And how that's notated is a circle with a hop that isn't filled in, okay, and it doesn't have a tail going up. It just sits wherever you're hitting the sound source. So, for instance, on the snare drum, it would sit on that second line down, in between the lines, or if you did it on the tom, it would sit in where the tom sits, or a cymbal, however you're putting it. The equivalent rest is like a little box. So it's a little box, like a little rectangle box, and it is connected to the, so you've got the 2 lines here and it's connected to the top. So we've got a little diagram to show you, but it's like a little box, but it's connected to the top line, basically. So in a similar way, if you were not playing anything for a whole bar, you would just have that at the front of the bar, and that would mean you weren't playing anything for a whole bar. Okay, so then up from that, you've got a half note. So back to our birthday cake, we're just splitting the birthday cake in half. So you've got a whole half to eat, and give a whole half to someone else. So that's that's a half note or a minim, which is the proper name. As I've said before, I generally use the Americanized versions because it's just more straightforward. Whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth note. It just makes more sense. But it's good to know, you know, the two different versions. So a half note lasts 2 beats in the bar, okay? So if you had a half note in the bar, it would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So notice I'm playing 2 hits in each bar because each hit is filling up 2 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And that is a whole note or a minim. And that is notated the same as a whole note, so it's a circle that's not filled in, but it has a tail going up. So that's how you know it's different from a semi-breve, because it's got the tail. And then the equivalent rest is again the little rectangle box, but instead of being connected to the top line, it's connected to the bottom line. Okay? So that note lasts 2 beats. Okay? And again, you refer to this diagram that I'll have up on the screen. Crotchet. So into some of the note values you looked at before. So a quarter note or a crotchet. So now this looks like, again, a little circle, but it's filled in and has a tail going up. Okay, and that lasts 1 beat. And like we've already done with quarter notes, we're splitting the birthday cake into 4 bits, so we've got 4 hits. So that would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Quarter notes. Its equivalent rest is a kind of squiggle thing that looks a bit like a 3. Again, you'll see that on the diagram. And obviously each hit is representing 1 beat because we're just splitting it into 4. Okay, so that's crotchet or quarter note, as I'll probably call it most of the time. Then we're splitting up the bar again, of course, into 1/8 notes. So we've got 4 there, and then we're splitting it up again into our 8 pieces. 8 bits of cake. So that is called a quaver. A quaver or an 1/8 note. I basically always forget the official names, but I always call it an 1/8 note. So an 1/8 note or a quaver. Now that is notated how it looks. Again, it's a coloured in circle with a tail going up. Now, we're always, if we've got 2 quavers, we connect the quaver to the next quaver, okay? Because when we're notating drum music, we're always keeping within each beat. So we connect the tails. So it kind of goes up and connects to the next one. We're not ever connecting tails across the different beats of the bar. So you would never connect a tail from beat 1 to beat 2. It's always within that first beat you connect the tails. If you've got a quaver or a quarter note on its own, it's got a tail going up and then a little bit curling down, because that is ready to connect to the other 1/8 note that should be there. And if that 1/8 note isn't there, then you have its equivalent 1/8 note rest, which again is like a little squiggle, but it looks like a 7. Again, you can see this in the description. And an 1/8 note or a quaver lasts half a beat. Okay, so you imagine one of these quarter note beats is in half. So it's that 1/8 note position. It's 1, it's 1/2 of that, isn't it? So it's the one of those eighths, which is half a beat, because that's a whole beat. 1, and that's half. Okay, so that is a quaver or an eighth note, and it's got its equivalent little 7 rest. And then the last note, value and rest we'll look at is a 16th note, or a semi-quaver, it's called. So again, this looks very similar to a eighth note. We've got the coloured in circle, and then it goes up. The tail goes up like that. But what we have here is when we connect across, because now we're connecting 4 16th notes within each beat, because we've split it into 8, and then we're splitting it up again into 16. I don't have enough hands or sticks to be able to show you that, but that's 8, and then again into 16. So within each beat of this, you've got 4 bits. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So yeah, so a 16th note is like a tail up, but then when it connects to the next 16th note, instead of having 1 line connected it has 2. Because when a 16th note's on its own, it has a tail going up, but then it has 2 little tails off the top, because it needs to connect to potentially 3 other 16th notes to make 4. So that might be a bit confusing, but when you see it written down, you can pretty much straight away see a 16th note, because you'll see the connection between the notes has 2 lines at the top, whereas an 8th note will just have 1. And then you've got its equivalent rest, which is again like a little 7, but this time it has an extra little thing jutting out. And obviously that's a 16th note now lasts a quarter of a beat, because as I've said, we've got that 1 beat here, and we're splitting that into 4. 1, E, and A. We've got 4 notes within a beat, basically. So yeah, that's 16th notes. And then up from there, it just keeps doubling, basically. 16th notes, then you've got 32nd notes. And again, when you see a 32nd note, instead of having 2 lines connecting it, it will have 3 lines. And then you've got 64th notes. You'll have 4 lines. Very rare that you see 32nd notes or 64th notes, if that's even how you pronounce it. Very rare that you see them. Because obviously they are, even at a slow tempo, they're going to be extremely fast. But yeah, it's the way that you can straight away see what the different note values are by the connecting lines at the top. Like I say, a standalone quarter note will just have 1 tail going up, or a minim, 1 tail going up. An 8th note, suddenly they're connected, or they've got a little waggly tail coming off. And then 16th notes, they're connected with 2 lines, or they've got 2 waggly tails. Okay? And that is rests and the equivalent note values.